But if it's, how could this happen to me?
This is
The
unfair.
universe is yeah, this is unfair. The universe is unjust. Everybody's against me. By the way, I'm speaking from personal experience here. This is not me talking about other people. I have literally been put in this position by my lawnmower, for goodness sakes. But it's a very profound moment when I'm, there in my overgrown backyard and seriously considering throttling an inanimate object and questioning the justice of the universe and God's goodness. Hello and welcome to Thinking Out Loud. I'm your co-host, Cameron McAllister.
And I'm your co-host, Nathan Rittenhouse.
Happy Black Friday, y'all. Did you wake up at the monastic hours and get in line? People don't do that as much now, I'm guessing, because of digital sales.
I like the idea. I like the fact that you use monastic in reference to Black Friday. That's just I appreciate that.
I thought I would
The
try to
ironies are
bring some, exalted notes to this whole endeavor. But actually, what we want to talk about, and maybe we'll make occasional references to Black Friday and all that it represents, but what we really want to focus in on here is gratitude. And gratitude is one of those words that it's like hope. There's a lot of really sentimental thinking surrounding it, and there's a lot of really superficial thinking surrounding it because of that. Because it's kind of a Hallmark card kind of word, I think we're often liable not to take it very seriously. And so it's worth pressing into what we're actually talking about when we mention the word gratitude. I think the general sentiment around this time of year, of course, we've just come through Thanksgiving, but the general sentiment is, well, we should all be more grateful because it's good to recognize one's blessings, and it's good to, take note of all of the wonderful, things in our lives. And it's this kind of, eat your broccoli sort of feel, yes, count your blessings. It's a good thing to do. There's a lot of things I want. I'm not very happy with a lot of my circumstances, but I guess I should be grateful. So let's try to put gratitude into maybe a more powerful perspective. And here to do that for us is my friend Nathan Rittenhouse, who's been running a little thought experiment that I think could get us out of this pickle. So Nathan, I want to hear about what you've been kicking around with gratitude here.
Yeah, okay, so this came from I'll tell you the origins of this. Um, which first of all, I would like to point out that I think I'm a fairly grateful person most every day. Working on it, but and I think that's an appropriate posture to have, and I think certainly biblical foundation for that. But I was preaching on the passage of the Lord's Supper, where Jesus is instituting that, and looking at the scene with the cup in which he gives thanks. So that's to give thanks in Greek is we would say Eucharisto or Eucharist comes from that's the word to give thanks, and he gives thanks. Um, and so looking at the thanksgiving that's being given there and the institution of that, I recognize that there are a couple degrees of gratitude. And just started looking at it. So I think this speaks to what you were saying about it's one of those weird words that's used in a lot of different ways. So let me run this by you, see if this works. So I think there's a first degree of gratitude, which is you do something for me that I could have done for myself, but I appreciate it. And it was an act of kindness and I'm thankful. So you hold the door open for me when I walk in. Great. I appreciate that. That's a level of gratitude, but I could have done it for myself. There's another kind of gratitude where you do something for me that's nice that I couldn't do for myself, but I didn't really need it or I could live without it. So you give me a pen or you bake a pie. Well, no, that doesn't make sense because I could get myself a pen. Let's say you bake a fancy pie for me that I can't bake for myself. Um, I'm appreciative. You did something for me that I couldn't do for myself. But the fact of the matter is, I probably could have survived if you hadn't done that for me. Then, and I think here's where we get to some deeper levels of gratitude. We there are things like if there's a situation where you can't do something for yourself and somebody does something for you that you will die. if that other thing isn't done, that you can't survive without that act of gratitude. That's the word we use for that type of gratitude is actually salvation. So you're drowning and you can't swim and somebody jumps in and grabs you, we would use the words the lifeguards saved their lives, right? Salvation becomes, and so the response that you have is a salvific is a gratitude of salvation. Um, so I would imagine that some of the superficiality of gratitude of, let's face it, the vast majority of Americans would not die if they didn't buy the stuff on Black Friday that they bought. So you can be thankful for the
Well,
resources to do that. Cameron really does need that
just
TV.
kidding.
So you can be thankful for the resources that you have, but it's more of a goodness and a kindness rather than a deep gratitude and appreciation for
Mhm.
the enablement of this in a way that you couldn't do on your own. So anyway, I don't know. There's a little framework there of working down through, I think, degrees of gratitude that's been helpful to me to sort out how to be appropriately thankful. And that's not at all to say that I'm not thankful for random acts of kindness or things. I mean, that's part of the goodwill of humanity and something that's certainly asked of us. But there are varying degrees, and I've been enjoying thinking through that schematic.
Yeah, I think a lot of the gratitude we express or that just comes to us naturally surrounds luxury items of some kind. So
Well, yeah, or even sweet potato casserole, right? Like I'm
right.
thankful
That
for
that's
it,
just what I
but I
mean, yeah.
don't need it. Yeah.
Right. By luxury, I just mean something that is nice, but you don't need it. And I wonder though, and now here's where so here comes Killjoy Cameron, ready to catapult us into all the philosophical and trenches. But I wonder though, because in America, there's a very strong tradition of emphasizing inventiveness, hard work, ingenuity, all that good. I mean, these are all good things, but also the myth of the self-made
Self-help.
person.
Yeah.
Right.
I did it
And
my way.
so,
Someone should write a song.
yes, but so that mindset is going to militate against that deeper level of gratitude, the recognition that what we have, that our very lives, all of this is gift. To think of, I mean, we don't often do this. Sometimes we need a theologian to come along and, clap us over the head and say, "Stop thinking about the world around you as a given and start recognizing that it is a gift and that life is a gift and that all of this exists as this tremendous abundance and didn't have to be there. You don't have to be here, but you get to be here." The theologian I have in mind here is John Milbank, by the way, who does
Mhm.
this. But that kind of fundamental recognition on the part of, say, a Christian like us, where we recognize that our very lives are tremendous gifts to us, and also, I mean, also this sounds funny here in conjunction, but the salvation, not just of I mean, the salvation of our entire souls and beings. But in order to do that though, that's a profoundly humbling gesture because that in that comes the recognition that you are not the one running the show and that gratitude is something that is part and parcel of the worship that is a proper expression from you. I mean, the worship that should be happening ought to be happening because you recognize the contingency of your life and your place here.
Yeah, well,
So
so,
there we
alright.
go.
Yep. So, help me with this one. So, imagine you smash your thumb, you stub your toe, and you're focused on the pain of it. Um, and yeah, that's gonna irritate you in countless ways. Okay, here's the thought experiment for everybody listening. Think about your left big toe right now. Is it hurting? And if it's not, that's great. I mean, it sounds
Right.
ridiculous to say, but we don't often sit around thinking of everything like, we don't even have an exhaustive list of everything that's good in our lives. My right big toe actually
Yeah.
feels pretty good right now too. So, like, I think it's right that we take days to focus on gratitude because usually we don't recognize gifts until something goes wrong. And
Right.
so there's that sense of like death, for example, is when we think
Mhm.
about life being a gift, or pain
Mhm.
is when we think about health being a gift, or um, yeah, my grandpa often said, "I like to give the Lord my attention because it hurts when he has to get it."
Yes.
there's a bit of a sense there of like, how do we become types of people who can appreciate good things without needing to be prompted because of pain to reflect on goodness? How does yeah, anyway, there's a thought.
It's a good thought because I think you're talking about taking something for granted. The classic example of, the plumber showing up and then you recognizing what you were taking for granted the smooth functioning of all these pipes in your house, and now that they're not working,
Mm.
suddenly you're intensely aware of the inner workings of your home. But it's a fine line between taking something for granted and then sliding into a sense of entitlement.
Ooh, yeah.
And yeah, and I think therein lies a very serious danger for many of us, especially growing up, in conditions of relative luxury and affluence for many of us. The place that you get to when things do start going wrong, as I mean, things are inevitably going to go wrong, by the way. Pipes will burst, you will lose a hot water heater, and your your left big toe will hurt at some point in your life, because this is a fallen world where, systems break down, relationships fall apart, all of that. But then when those things happen, it's very instructive to pay attention to how we respond. If our response is ouch, sadness, and just normal, visceral responses, and
Mhm.
there's an appropriate degree of lament, fine. But if it's how could this happen to me?
This is
The
unfair.
universe is yeah, this is unfair. The universe is unjust. Everybody's against me. By the way, I'm speaking from personal experience here. This is not me talking about other people. I have literally been put in this position by my lawnmower, for goodness sakes. But it's a but it's a very profound moment, when I'm, there in my, overgrown backyard, and seriously considering throttling an inanimate object and questioning the justice of the universe and God's goodness. I always think of, I come back to this a lot. It's Pascal says, it takes a trifle to upset us because it takes a trifle to please us. So often
Mm.
we're too easily pleased. Just give us a pumpkin pie and we're happy for a while and really grateful. But then break our lawnmower or our hot water heater and suddenly our whole worldview collapses and our religion goes out the window. But that's a picture of a posture of profound ingratitude, though, if we're in that place. And so it is good to actually, but it's going to require a higher degree of intentionality. I mean, Nathan, you mentioned earlier that you are actually you are a grateful person, and that you aim. I would say you probably aim to cultivate that posture, and that's
Mhm.
something that you know there are various habits and ways to work at building that awareness. One of the most basic ways in the Christian life is, of course, prayer, and part of prayer, is praising God, but also thanking Him for His provision. And
Mhm.
the Lord's provision is no, it's not often. Always it always exceeds what you realize. You just the problem is we just often don't take account of it. And this is actually, if we get to some of the cliched phrases that are actually quite profound, counting one's blessings, that's part of what that's getting at, though, in
Yeah,
the
well, yeah,
original
I
sense
was
is
thinking, yeah, the
yeah,
song it's a good song, and it will
it
count your
is.
blessings, name them one by one, and it will surprise you what the Lord has done. That's actually true.
Yes. Right, because yeah, so counting your blessings doesn't mean, well, we gotta switch game system now, and then, grandma's making her Dutch apple pie. I am really excited about that, by the way. But no, it's really taking stock, or just bringing to your conscious awareness God's goodness to you and His sustaining of you and the way He carries you through even some of the darkest times, and even the moments of grace in the midst of pain and suffering. I think, yeah, that's a wonderful exercise, but it is a posture to be cultivated, and it's something that we have to lean into because, again, I think our age predisposes us to a sense of entitlement.
Well, so the other thing though to keep in mind here, not to make a utility out of this, but gratitude is the prerequisite for joy. There
This is
there
true.
aren't any happy people who aren't grateful. Um, and one of the all right, story time here. One of the strange experiences that's been really formative in my life, and I know for a large swath of my family, is um, so I'll talk about my other grandparents. They lived a pretty simple life. He was a house painter and a preacher for 50, 60 years. Very simple home. And we would gather for Thanksgiving in their basement, coal stove. He had this black chair that he sat on that I think had some black duct tape holding it together. So, not a plush, you know, living situation by most modern American standards. But he would often lead us in a time of Thanksgiving and worship before our Thanksgiving meal. And he would often cry when he prayed with his deepest theological question in life was why God had been so good to him and
Hmm.
to his family. And so when you watch an old man be able to weep for joy because of the goodness that he sees in the world, despite we're talking about somebody who's seen it all as far as brokenness, death, heartache, stillborn babies, addiction, mental ill. I mean, when you're okay, it's not a naive gratitude. It's a deeply embedded in the actual fabric of how humanity works, and yet could still say, why is there this excess in my life sitting in a chair that's duct taped together? It's it's a it's a next level um recognition that the world could be other than it is,
Mhm.
and the option in which we live is superior to a way that it could be because of something that's been done for us that's outside of our control that is benevolent.
Yeah, and that's a profound meditation on the nature of joy there too, because if I remember Dallas Willard once saying that there's a measure of grace in every single situation and circumstance, no matter how grave or dire, but you'll never see it if you grumble. And he said this
Hmm,
as Dallas Willard always said everything with such gentleness and such care. And he was older when he preached this sermon. And if you know anything about Dallas Willard, he saw, like all of us do, he saw his share of pain and suffering. So I think I mean, again, speaking from personal experience, I can look back and I can see so many, I don't know, times in my life where I choked out joy with my own complaining and my own grumbling.
hmm.
And it's and and there were but to look back and to recognize that even in those moments, the Lord's mercy was there. But also to recognize that I had, in a sense, an unrealistic view of life because like so many people, I sometimes walk around with the assumption that I should always feel good all the time. I should feel
Mhm.
yeah, I mean, I should feel good all the time. Everybody should be okay. And there should be, maybe a modest level of hardship in my life, but never anything unmanageable. If it's unmanageable, that's when I start to get into the whole how dare this happen to me? How could this ever be the case?
Yeah.
But
Do
those but those are the moments where and it's so funny and it's humbling to, admit this out loud. But then you come to the recognition, wait, that's just not a realistic way to look at life in general. But here's the other thing. Here's my word of challenge. Everybody knows that. Everybody knows. Yes, the world can be a dark place and yes, there will be pain for everybody. Yes, we all get that. It's not necessary for me to harp on that. What what I find consistently is that things are often not as bad as I want to make them out to be at times. That
you
there
wanna
is
justify
more
your bad mood.
right, exactly. Well, because going off on those tangents is a form of morbid self-indulgence.
Hmm.
And now I don't mean at all to downplay the severity of pain that people are dealing with, but I do mean to say that joy is available in each and every circumstance. And that is duct tape chair or no, that is a really profound thing, but that can only be true, by the way, if we serve the living God. if we don't, there most assuredly is not joy in every circumstance. And indeed, some of those circumstances would be so bad, I think they could weigh you down or they could
Mhm.
overshadow any sense of joy. But because we serve Christ and belong to him, there is no moment that is beyond his reach and you're never alone. So I think it's one thing to say that. It's another thing to actually to live in light of that reality.
You
That's an ongoing challenge for me at
Yeah,
least.
I don't know
I'm good
what
at
the
complaining.
where's the appropriate balance? Because I think there are people who are a bit morbid, like, so there's the, "Oh, everything needs to be perfect." Um, there's an older generational look too, where it's the opposite, where everything
Sure.
is about to be bad. You know, you and I have an older friend named Tom. I think I asked him one time how he was doing, and he said, "Well, I'm in between crises," which is probably
Yeah.
indicative of how the human experience goes. But I think I've shared this before. So one of my brothers is a physical therapist, and he enjoys laughing. He's like, 40-year-old man with a knee replacement. He's like, "I'm going to hear belly aching about that for the next 6 weeks of rehab." He said, "You give me a 78-year-old lady with a knee replacement, and she's gonna be up baking casseroles for her neighbor in 3 days." Like, just like some sort of strange, like, generational life is pain and misery and like, "Oh, that was a minor setback, but I'm gonna keep on going."
Mhm.
Like, so is that an age thing, or is that like I
I think
I
there's a
I
bit of a
tend to think
generational thing happening
generational
there.
thing of, like,
I
what our
do, yeah.
expectation of, because now you're talking about people who are old enough to probably have their teeth pulled with rudimentary, anesthesia in their childhood and that sort of thing, where, like,
Mhm.
how do we appropriately balance the expectation of what's great and what's miserable? I don't know that we have a good frame of reference for that where we sit in the 21st century as Americans.
No, I don't, and I think I mean, we've talked before about how the notion that you should feel great all the time is incredibly destructive, actually, because and that's not just because 'cause I'm being a Debbie Downer, but because it's first of all, it's impossible. So it you set yourself up for failure there. So that's a mindset that adds a crushing psychological burden to life's pain. So it's one thing if you have, I think, a good realistic outlook of the world, and you say, "Yeah, no, this world is filled with pain and loss. That they don't call it a veil of tears for nothing." And so you have that perspective. Now you can go too far with that and get all, stoical and just model this complete sort of rigid, resignation. That's probably not helpful either. But or you can just say, no, I mean that's to be expected. But the other notion, no, you should feel great all the time. You should, you should constantly monitor your mood and make sure that you feel good all the time. Well, then when you don't, you start to feel guilty for not feeling good and you feel depressed about being depressed and it adds a whole nother degree of psychological menace when really you're just going through normal pain and suffering. I mean, yeah, between crises. Nathan, you and I have small children. I like to make the joke to people that I'm always with little kids, I'm always in between illnesses. So I mean, that's part of life is maintaining that balance of recognizing, yeah, no, it's a world where there is pain and suffering, sometimes a great deal of it, but also this is my father's world. Those are statements of some serious tension for me,
Mhm.
but
Mhm.
it's also but those are saying that as an article of faith for us as Christians because we're recognizing and we're putting our trust in the living God and saying in the end all things are in his hands and I can trust in his love in spite of some of these circumstances. But yes, certainly the notion that you should feel good all the time will run you into all sorts of problems because you're not going to feel good all the time. And then you start to think something's terribly wrong with me.
Well, just go buy something,
Something is
it'll
not
make you feel
necessary.
better.
Well, yeah,
That's what I tell
yeah,
my
but
kids when you're
that's
sad, "Just eat. It's fine."
right,
It
exactly.
always
But I
works
mean,
out great.
that's the answer that's on hand often from I mean, especially on a day like Black Friday. Well, but you know what you need is you just need this latest
Mhm.
game system or you need this latest product and that'll take your mind off it for a while. And
You know,
it will for a while, but only for a while.
so there's an interesting background to Black Friday thing in contentment, because I think contentment then is an expression of gratitude as well, right? Um,
For
and
sure.
a line that my one of my grandfathers always repeated over and over to me is, "If you don't need it, it's never a good deal." If you don't need it, it's
Hmm.
never a good deal. And Black Friday markets and like 40% off. Yes, I need a new set of towels. Do you like
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
there's like that being able to appropriately distinguish what your actual needs and your wants are, and it's not bad to have uh, excess. God created the world with excess. I think you can certainly overdo that, but contentment as a um, hallmark of appropriate gratitude seems to be, yeah, that seems right to me. Would you say, like, to be able to say it is well with my soul because it is my Father's world means that my I have my daily bread,
Hmm.
and should we as Christians be the people who should be able to recognize enough sooner?
I think so. Yes, I think again a mark of spiritual maturity would be the ability to have that recognition and to say it is well with my soul. And if you know the circumstances under which that was
Mhm,
composed, you'll know that that's no small saying right there. It's also, but again, it's an act of trust because it's a recognition that what you have, what the Lord has given to you is sufficient for your needs. And also the recognition that he knows what is best for you. You think you know. We think we know what's best for ourselves. But if we're honest and we look back on our own experiences, we'll see that many times what we thought we so desperately needed was in fact not what we needed. And not getting what we wanted ended up being a mercy to us. Now, sometimes we do get what we think we want, and we learn the hard way that this was not, in fact, what we wanted. But often, the Lord, in His mercy, withholds from us things that we want that will actually bring us harm. Contentment is also the ability to rest in that trust of the Lord. I mean, I think we look at our world around us, and there's a deep restlessness that just punctuates our culture.
mhm,
It is just it's a frenzy of restlessness because we're so desperately looking for sources of fulfillment. We're looking for something to satisfy ourselves, and we're looking in places where all that's on offer is going to be temporary at best, a momentary distraction. But if we this is where part of the profound truth that really all we need, all we need to rest and to satisfy our souls is already he is already here with us and available
mhm,
to us.
yeah.
But you have to get past the distractions to do that. And sometimes our some of our more superficial desires can cloud our judgment there.
If we're speaking of deep gratitude and we look at the structure of the world, I want to pick up on something you just said. Your biggest needs in life are already met. In that
Yes.
passage, Jesus knows where he's coming from and he knows where he's going. And so then he gets up, wraps a towel around him, and serves, washes his disciples' feet. And so, this idea of knowing where we're from, knowing where we're going, the situatedness of the way in which we're embedded in the world, it's our Father's world. Your biggest problems in life are already solved as a Christian. And so, we can live with contentment in that. I wonder, Cameron, if I can close I want just read some of the lines from When Peace Like a River, because I think it is a fitting meditation on contentment. And Cameron made an allusion to it just quickly. If you don't know, this was written um, by Horatio Spafford when he was on a boat passing by the place where his daughters and wife had previously, was it just his daughters, I think. His daughters had died crossing the Atlantic on a ship, and he wrote this while on another ship going past the place where he was told that they died. But I'll give you the first and last verse, and let this be a haunting to you of the possibility of peace and contentment in a weary world. When peace like a river attendeth my way, when sorrows like sea billows roll, whatever my lot, thou hast taught me to say, it is well with my soul. And then there's the hope verse at the end. And the Lord haste the day when my faith shall be sight, the clouds be rolled back as a scroll. The trump shall sound, and the Lord shall descend. even so, it is well with my soul. And so I think that's a wonderful meditation on recognizing the brokenness of the world, that it's situated in something that will one day be restored, but that there's a peace that is legitimately possible and a satisfaction that is real, even in the present time as we wait for all of the future goodness to come to fruition. You've been listening to Thinking Out Loud, a podcast where we think out loud about current events and Christian hope.
Thanks for listening to Thinking Out Loud. If you'd like to learn more about what we do, book Nathan or Cameron, or if you'd like to support us financially, whether through a one-time donation or on a monthly basis, you can do so on the donate page at www.toltogether.com. That's toltogether.com. And please consider leaving us a 5-star rating and sharing this content with your friends. It really does help.